So it's not usually the case that, you know, students will go to even just administrators and say, hey, our workers need a living wage. And it's not usually the case that you can go to Sodexo and say, hey, Sodexo workers need a living wage. So that's the reason for this Kick Out Sodexo campaign. There were many times throughout the 2 years that this campaign has been running that we, as students, specifically tried to say our workers need this, workers across the world need these basic rights, and basically those concerns fell on deaf ears. So it's come to the point where we have to say, get rid of the corporation. They are violating the rights of our workers. They aren't even listening to students' concerns for our workers who service us every day. There's no reason to continue pouring money into this billionaire corporation. So hence the Kick Out Sodexo campaign. And basically what that means is that you end a contract and you're affecting the company's bottom line, which ultimately is its profits. Ultimately the reason, you know, why corporations will cut hours, why they won't provide, you know, living wages is to save more and more money. The reason that they will charge excessive amounts on meals is to profit more. And it really isn't until you get to that point where you can affect their money directly that they're going to pay attention and make the changes that students and workers want to see at their universities. So by putting students putting pressure on the universities, saying, hey, we don't need this corporation here, we don't want this corporation, our contract cuts can come about. The pressure comes from here, it comes from workers who are organizing on campus, and that's basically how you guys go. And just as an example, I refer to, how many of you have heard of the Nike campaign that USAS ran last year? Oh, sweet. Okay. So, in this instance, USAS was campaigning for the rights of workers abroad in Honduras. And basically what we heard was workers in Honduras had 2 factories shut down that were producing Nike apparel, not just Nike apparel, but collegiate apparel. Apparel that was going to our universities that we were purchasing. And basically what USAS did is we launched campaigns on individual campuses across the nation and called for an end to these Nike contracts at our universities. These Nike contracts are huge. Any sort of football, like craziness you got at your university, it means a lot of money to Nike, it means a lot of money to the school. And basically what we were saying is, hey, in this instance, these workers weren't paid over $2 million and legally owed severance pay. So we were saying Nike needs to pay up. And the only way that that was going to happen is if we ended this contract at our universities. And that's what happened at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. It was the first university to cut its contract with Nike. Nike is huge. Nike is loaded. So this was actually a pretty epic thing to happen in the part of like the student labor movement. And the next school to sort of even just, where's Casey? Even just threatened to cut their contract. Casey is a student at Cornell and also a USASer. Do you want to say a little bit to what you did at Cornell?
Yeah, so we didn't actually we didn't end the contract, but we pressured our president to threaten and tell Nike that when the contract was up in January that he wasn't going to do business with Nike anymore because of these labor violations, and that was a bigger deal in my opinion because Nike provided our like sports equipment, whereas at Wisconsin they took them out of the bookstore, but our agreement would just be to like stop doing business with Nike completely. And with the pressure from Wisconsin and also students at Brown did the same thing, and like just those 3 universities, it was like enough to really pressure Nike, this huge mega corporation, to own up to what it did.
So contract cut at Wisconsin, Cornell, Brown, in the process of, and Nike basically caved. And they paid up to these workers in Honduras who were making our collegiate apparel. So, you know, USAS has done it in the past. Students have done it in the past. We know that this is something that works in terms of hearing student and worker voices. And, yeah, I mean, that's just a quick example of how we went. And, don't just take all of the stuff that I said about the workers from me. Karina Mieses is here to speak specifically about the conditions that she faced working for Sodexo in the Dominican Republic. And we'll tell you a little more about her struggle trying to get basic rights for herself and her co-workers.
Yeah, so thanks, and let's welcome Karina here.
Gracias, buenas tardes. Como le dije anteriormente, soy Karina Mieses, vengo de República Dominicana a compartir con ustedes mi experiencia y condiciones que viví en Sodexo.
Hi, thank you again. My name is Karina Mieses. I'm from the Dominican Republic, and I'm here to share my story and my experiences working for Sodexo.
Yo estuve trabajando en Sodexo por 1 año y 2 meses.
I worked for Sodexo for a year and 2 months.
Las condiciones que se viven en Sodexo son totalmente aberrantes contra el trabajador.
The conditions under Sodexo were completely horrible.
Lo primordial en Sodexo es pagando el sueldo, que es un sueldo miserable, donde tampoco se pagan la hora extra, donde existe mucho también el maltrato verbal y físico contra el trabajador, especialmente con las mujeres.
One of the things that impacted us most were the poverty wages that we were receiving from Sodexo. On top of that, we were hardly ever paid for the extra hours that we worked. And even on top of that, there was various examples of physical and verbal abuse that we faced.
Cuando me refiero al maltrato físico y verbal, especialmente con las mujeres, es por lo siguiente. Mis compañeras y yo, es muy difícil cuando estaban en hora de trabajo, que tenían deseo de ir al baño, por ejemplo, no podían hacerlo. Si tenían hambre y querían comer algo, tampoco podían hacerlo. Todo el tiempo tenían que estar paradas, haciendo fuerza, tenían exceso de trabajo, los supervisores se burlaban de nosotras, no podían a trabajar el doble.
And, just to give you some examples of some of the abuse that we faced, we often were not allowed to even take bathroom breaks during our complete shifts. We often weren't allowed to even take breaks to have a meal during our shifts. We were always forced to work, especially forced to stay standing during our work. There was always excessive work, especially with women.
Varios accidentes, existen en la compañía por falta de herramientas del trabajo. Nosotros estamos en una área muy peligrosa porque es una mina de oro en la cual hay muchos peligros y Sodexo no tiene las herramientas suficientes para continuar el trabajo, y por falta de esas herramientas han existido varios accidentes, por lo cual ha visto compañeros y compañeras la cual se han cortado por falta de guantes. Tengo una compañera en especial que se fracturó la columna, la cual hoy en día está deshabilitada por trabajar, y Sodexo no les respeta las condiciones médicas. Ella tiene que continuar el trabajo porque no le paga la licencia médica, a pesar de que ella ha tenido ya varias consecuencias también, aparte de la columna, por el exceso y falta de herramientas en el trabajo.
And another example of Sodexo's disregard for its workers is there's many accidents that happen in the Sodexo location I worked at because of the safety equipment that Sodexo refused to provide us. The mine that I worked at is a very dangerous environment to work in, and when we don't have the safety equipment, it leads to many accidents. For example, I witnessed co-workers who frequently cut their hands because they were missing safety gloves, co-workers who severely injured their backs, who needed a lot of treatment and needed help paying for the injury that happened on the job, but despite that, Sodexo refused to pay for any type of treatment due to accidents that happened on the job.
Otro ejemplo de una compañera es que se desmayó frente a los clientes por el hambre que tenía, a pesar de que ella había dicho que tenía hambre y tenía que continuar trabajando, y ella tuvo un desmayo porque se desmayó por el hambre. Y también otra compañera que perdió su bebé por el exceso de trabajo que obtenía ya en el trabajo, en la compañía, ya que ella había ido al médico y le habían dicho que se podían cambiarla de departamento porque en realidad tenía problemas con su embarazo y perdió el bebé por el exceso de trabajo que tuvo en la compañía.
Another one of my coworkers actually fainted on the job because she hadn't been eating throughout